trillion US dollars. Its international influence and appeal are increasing day by day. Looking back, we have weathered the storms on our journey and emerged stronger because we have adhered to the Shanghai spirit. Looking ahead, we should carry forward the Shanghai spirit in a world fraught with challenges and changes. Forge ahead with solid steps and better tap into the potential of our organization. First, we should seek common ground while putting aside differences. Shared aspirations are the source of strength and advantage, and the will to seek commonality while shelving differences reflects wisdom and vision. SCO member states are all friends and partners. We should respect our differences, maintain strategic communication, build up consensus, and strengthen solidarity and collaboration. We should make the pie of cooperation bigger and fully utilize the endowment of every country so that we can fulfill our responsibility for peace, stability, development, and prosperity in the region. Second, we should pursue mutual benefit and win-win results. We need to better align our development strategies and promote the high-quality implementation of the Belt and Road Initiative, so that in planning and building relevant projects together and benefiting from them together, we can strengthen the momentum of regional development and improve the well-being of the people. We should leverage the strength of our mega-sized markets and economic complementarity between member states, and improve trade and investment facilitation. We should enhance cooperation in such areas as energy, infrastructure, green industry, digital economy, scientific and technological innovation, and artificial intelligence. We should march toward modernization hand in hand by bringing out the best in one another and working together for a shared future. Third, we should champion openness and inclusiveness. The vast land of Asia and Europe, a cradle of ancient civilizations where the earliest exchanges between the East and the West took place, has been the driving force behind human progress. Since ancient times, people of different countries have bartered and traded for mutual benefit and learned from each other. SCO member states need to enhance mutual understanding and friendship through people-to-people exchanges, firmly support one another in economic cooperation, and jointly cultivate a garden of civilizations in which all cultures flourish in prosperity and harmony through mutual enlightenment. Fourth, we should uphold fairness and justice. We must promote a correct historical perspective on World War II and oppose the Cold War mentality, bloc confrontation, and bullying practices. We should safeguard the UN-centered international system and support the multilateral trading system with the WTO at its core. We should advocate an equal and orderly multipolar world and a universally beneficial and inclusive economic globalization, and make the global governance system more just and equitable. Fifth, we should strive for real results and high efficiency. We should continuously promote SCO reform, increase resources input, and enhance capacity building to improve its institutional structure and make its decision-making more scientific and its actions more efficient. We should put into use the SCO Universal Center for Countering Security Challenges and Threats, and the SCO Anti-Drug Center, and set up an SCO Development Bank as soon as possible to provide stronger underpinnings for security and economic cooperation among member states. Colleagues, China always aligns its development with that of the SCO.
Hello, everyone. How's it going? What's up, Abby? Sorry, you look a little lost. Can you hear me?
Yes, I'm a little lost. Oh, okay.
I just saw the video.
I did not realize it. Huh?
It seemed like the video had started over, so I shut it down. But was I incorrect? Was there still more to it? Or?
Yeah, I don't think it has started over, no. But that isn't even the speech I was really looking for.
Oh, I see.
The speech I was really looking for was actually a speech from their parade, which I was looking for. That's why when I heard my name, I'm like, what?
Well, I'm typically not like the biggest follower of all the like the Putin and Xi Jinping and all these leaders like Trump and them, like what they're up to every single day. I don't need to really hear like what they said at this meeting of these organizations. To me, people are blowing up a little bit out of proportion the significance of these events, making them to be the most historic events of all time kind of thing. And that's part of that great man theory of history, I feel, is at least somewhat influencing that media coverage. So I try not to be like a Putin whisperer, Trump whisperer, like I'm saying. So when I see them at these meetings, I know exactly what's going to happen, whatever, right? So when you asked me to go find that that speech, I was like, okay, I'll look for it, but that's not really my primary focus on what I'm trying to report. So my bad.
Okay.
I finally get a lot of boilerplate statements. You know, you get these statements made for TV, and you can read all sorts of different interpretations into it, and they're usually quite vague and open-ended statements. So you're not really hearing too much concrete being said there. So maybe I'm wrong there.
I mean, everybody's entitled to their opinion. I really wanted to play this because he specifically mentions being a Marxist-Leninist nation, and he talks about that in the speech. So I thought that might interest you.
It is interesting. It's worth looking to. It's just a bit complicated.
I found the speech, by the way.
It gets kind of complicated when you delve into like who calls himself a Marxist-Leninist, who's allowed to call themselves Marxist-Leninists, where different Marxist-Leninists disavow each other, saying, or you're not a real ML. You know, there's a bit of a no true Scotsman fallacy that can happen here. But at the same time, there is such a thing as pretending to be what you're not, or not realizing that you're not really upholding the legacy, whatever. A lot of this is attached to traditions, right? So it's all fine and well to ascribe to a specific sect of Marxism, but if that's kind of limiting the progress towards communism in general by limiting who is and is not allowed to be a communist, then we have a bit of a problem with sectarianism that can be very easily exploited by infiltrators and CIA type people. You know, it should be obvious to anyone. It's not too much in our benefit to be too much of a hardcore ML or MLM or MT or whatever, MLT or whatever. Like, what are all these? It's alphabet soup after a while, you know. There's a video I shared in our Discord that unfortunately was done by someone who is not a communist. Maybe it would be better to have a communist do a video like that. But he went through all the different varieties of Marxists, and it was kind of educational, except that it's not coming from a communist perspective. It's coming from someone who is disillusioned from communism. So whether, take from that what you will.
There's this I want to watch this. There's this Jubilee debate. It's the one capitalist versus, was it 20 non-capitalists or what have you? So non-capitalists, so that could be, many variations of whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And it's that guy. What is that douche's name? He recently interviewed Netanyahu, and it was like the most ridiculous softball interview. It was basically insulting, and I think he got paid for that too, because Netanyahu's like on this independent media tour.
Was that Patrick Bet David or something? Is that his name?
What's his name?
Patrick Bet David or Ben David? I don't.
His podcast is called like PDP or P. Yeah, PB, I think that's him.
Patrick
and I believe he's Iranian, which made it even worse.
Yeah. But this is a funny thing about trying to categorize people with nationalism and ethnicity and whatnot. It tends to be you're using social constructs, but you're not necessarily always acknowledging that that's what you're doing. So when you say this person's an Iranian, so he should be on the side of all the other Iranians. But there's how many, whatever, people in the diasporas that are, traitors, class traitors, or whatever your type of traitor, they just have, for whatever reason, the complete opposite worldview of the rest of their people. So.
Yeah, I mean, it's worth pointing out because it's worth pointing out.
Because he's a hypocrite.
Even, I forget, there was another debate. Oh, Hassan Mehdi did a debate, one of those Jubilee debates too. And there was this like young Iranian. It was just so sad the way he was talking, and Mehdi was like, "You really sound like you have some self-hate there. You might need to work on that." Like he really sounded like he needed therapy. Oh, you hate to see it, but it happens.
Yep. It's always fun being a public personality or whatever. Then everyone gets to kind of say, so who are you? Where are you from? Or whatever. How does who you try to represent yourself as contradict with who everyone thinks you're supposed to be, So.
I mean, well, he was like really far out there.
Yeah, well, Mehdi, Hassan, and them, I'm not really too hopeful that they're going to amount to much with their post-mainstream media careers here. I'd rather just see like a new generation of commentators that haven't quite spent so long kind of licking the boot, Can't really be trusted just to act like, oh, I've really given up the boot, whatever. I'm no longer addicted to it. Okay, if you say so, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, Mehdi was pretty. He gave a lot of pushback though. I think that's why. I mean,
he gets paid for it. I mean, is it entertainment at the end of the day, whatever? So even just like the WWE kind of comparison that's always made about politics, right? It's kind of performative. It's made mainly as a distraction, wherever. Even if it seems like their careers being jeopardized, wherever, if it's part of a spectacle, it's not as significant as it seems, So.
Mm-hmm. You're awfully positive today. That was sarcasm.
I don't know.
That was sarcasm.
Yeah. All right. My eyes have been bothering me. I'm just gonna turn my camera off until they stop making me having to rub my face or whatever constantly. But yeah, I've been maybe a little bit on the somber side because I've kind of hit my limit with my drinking that I typically do after a week or two, and I need to take a break, whatever. So I'm a little bit maybe down just because I got to do my sober days here. So maybe that makes me kind of negative, or cynical or something, whatever, just food for thought.
Is your body feeling tired?
Yeah, I was yesterday or whatever, I was feeling awful. So I feel better today, but that's because I went to bed early, like before midnight or whatever last night, right? So and I try to get some extra sleep there. So got to get back on track.
John Kemper says every politician seems to be able to tell one truth to keep the propaganda going.
Yeah, and then the eclectic, the tendency to be eclectic makes us try to combine the truths or whatever into the Megatron of truth, whatever.
Yeah, it's been a lot going on this week, and everybody's pretty much covered it all. So we're trying to do something different. Do you want to start, Michael? I didn't say hey to everybody in the chat. You know who you are. The gang is here.
Sorry, we had a bit of a stumble in the beginning, so we didn't get to have our typical meet and greet. Good to see you all as usual.
And
crap.
While you're setting up, yes, there are some world leaders that I really did like listening to their speeches. Mainly Gaddafi.
Yeah, there are certain speeches that are, you could definitely say are historic, and it's just kind of hard to know exactly. Maybe I'm not following the politics as like a journalist enough, like an authentic journalist, but to know which is going to be the historic moment ahead of time is kind of predicting the future, right? So,
and I don't mind listening to Putin's speeches. They're pretty interesting to listen to as well.
Yeah, but then it takes like a pretty deep analysis to really get into the actual details that they're talking about. So, like talking about that little speech that like I thought maybe you were gonna look for that other parade speech that you wanted to actually show, and then we could do analysis of that video. But as far as the one that
I have it.
As far as the one that we shared with people this at the beginning, he's making comments about turning away from like a Cold War mentality, and that's all well and good. But then that's as far as what kind of comments I want to be making about that is, in looking at the this rapprochement or whatever, this cozying up of India and China, I feel like the elephant in the room is not really being discussed, which is why are we not considering that to be a red-brown alliance? If you want to understand how the RSS, the world's oldest fascist organization, is the driving force behind Narendra Modi's BJP, the political power.
Wait, you're using a lot of acronyms.
Right. So because they're Indian political terms, they're kind of hard for me to I forget what they stand for, and they're usually they're written in short form, so you don't even necessarily, unless you go looking for the full term, you won't really know what it is, whatever. Let me just briefly.
Well, instead of looking for what the acronym stands for, just give like a brief description of what it is.
That's what I was trying to say. The RSS is India's fascist organization.
Mm-hmm.
It's the main. It's not an actual political party, but it's got so much influence that it is tried to really determine who is and isn't allowed into the political parties in power. So it's kind of an important. So it's Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh. So I apologize to any Indian comrades listening in the background. Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh is a significant socio-political organization in India, founded in 1925 by Keshav Baliram Hedgewar. It was established as part of the movement against British rule, allegedly, and aims to promote Hindu nationalism and cultural unity. The problem with that is that they kind of collaborated with the British against other Hindu nationalists, right? So recently, Prime Minister Narendra Modi celebrated the 100-year journey of the RSS, calling it the world's largest.
Are you supposed to be sharing something?
No, I was just reading the
Oh, okay, go ahead.
Googled RSS India or whatever.
Sorry,
I
go
wonder
ahead.
if the Wikipedia page itself would declare that it's a fascist organization, because this is what often happens. You go looking for something on the web and it's kind of been scrubbed of its actual content, because we know kind of who owns the majority of these websites and whatnot. So they corrupt the information. So I was just reading the little blurb that pops up when you Google it, whatever. So the RSS has played a crucial role in various socio-political movements in India, including its involvement in the independence struggle and contemporary political discourse. But when you click the actual Wikipedia, then it says the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh National Volunteer Union, or National Volunteer Corps is what that translates to, is an Indian right-wing Hindutva volunteer paramilitary organization. Right? So that's, is that not fascist enough for other people? Like the right-wing paramilitary organization that supports a political party kind of thing. It's like their militia and their recruiting organization. And then they kind of determine, are their recruits useful for political action or some more violent kind of on the ground work? If you want to understand Indian politics, I'm only a novice, or whatever, but you're going to have to kind of understand how the RSS influences the political parties. So let me determine which article to start with here, maybe. Pardon me for rambling.
I could play the speech while you're doing that.
Sure.
Okay.
All my fellow Chinese across the nation, Your Excellencies, heads of state and government, and representatives of international organizations, distinguished guests.
Oh, wait. Okay, so this sucks. So do we really have to hear him in Mandarin? Or they could have just put... Yeah, this sucks. Okay, I'm just going to go... I'm going to push through it.
You really can't... They're trying to limit our ability to... They're limiting our ability to research things on the fly, because we're kind of predisposed to click on the first thing that comes up. So then it's going to give us like one of the worst options, you know. So... Oh, God.
All officers and soldiers participating in the parade, comrades and friends. Today, we gather here to solemnly commemorate the 80th anniversary of the victory of the Chinese People's War of Resistance against the Japanese aggression and the World Anti-Fascist War. It is an occasion for us to remember history, honor fallen heroes, cherish peace, and create a better future. On behalf of the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China, the National People's Congress, the State Council, the National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, and the Central Military Commission, I would like to pay high tribute to our veteran soldiers and comrades, patriots, and officers who fought in a war of resistance against Japanese aggression, and to the Chinese nationals from home and abroad who made important contributions to our victory. I would also like to express my sincere thanks to foreign governments and friends that supported and assisted the Chinese people in resisting aggression. I also extend a warm welcome to our guests from around the world who are with us today.
Okay, hopefully we can get to the present and future now.
Comrades and friends.
Here we go.
The Chinese People's War of Resistance against the Japanese aggression was a great war fought with tenacity and valor. Under the banner of the National United Front against Japanese aggression, established at the initiative of the Communist Party of China, the Chinese people stood up to fight the formidable enemy with an iron will and formed a great war with flesh and blood to defend the nation, and ultimately achieved the first complete victory in resisting foreign aggression in modern times. The Chinese People's War of Resistance against Japanese aggression was an important part of the World Anti-Fascist War. With huge national sacrifice, the Chinese people made major contributions to saving human civilization and safeguarding world peace. History cautions us that humanity rises and falls together. Only when all countries and nations treat each other as equals, coexist in peace, and support each other, can we uphold common security, eradicate the root cause of war, and prevent the reoccurrence of historical tragedies.
Okay, now that was based. You have a comment?
Not quite. Well, I mean, in general,
we rise and fall together, right? We want to live in peace.
Yeah, this is what I'm talking about with boilerplate statements and stuff. Like the U.S. says all kinds of really glowing statements too about we're all in this together, right? And we're wanting to bring real democracy, not this fake imperialist shit, whatever. But the way that they say it, if you're ignorant, whatever, you'll just kind of say, "Oh, he's telling the truth there," right? And it's very hard to be critical. Sorry, I'm having problems with the microphone. I don't know if it's.
Hi, Cowboy Kitty. No, I heard you just fine. So, like my thing here is, okay, Nick was fanboying off of.
That's what I'm saying. The problem with Marxism, in order to be a communist, you have to be a Marxist-Leninist or whatever, else you're not part of the real communists. So then we all have this problem of not being dialectical so much as we should be, because we are genuflecting, we are ass-kissing to move up, to gain social capital, okay?
So no, you're fine. Like, my comment about this part is, like, I like everything he just said. I'm all for it. Like, China's not starting any wars all over the place. That's America terrorizing the whole world and Israel. And but we cannot not talk about the fact that China could very well be an economic hitman to some countries. So
I would remember Sun Tzu's Art of War, in that one of the most legendary statements from that book is about like the tactic of winning without even having to fight is the best way to win. So if that's essentially like part of the core Chinese military strategy, to try and win through economic warfare and psychological warfare primarily, and to avoid having to even get to the battlefield to begin with, that doesn't mean that there isn't a kind of domination, imperialism potential with that. But I don't want to give like the U.S. narrative too much gas, you know?
Okay. Should we keep going?
I've been reminded a bit of something also, as far as like I'm trying not to be overly critical on China. I'm trying to give them the opportunity to prove themselves in real time, right? And do my best to analyze them from my foundation of knowledge that I've managed to build up, right? And hopefully I can see, based on what I learned, how they are upholding like the proper legacy and how they are achieving a revolutionary tactic that others have somehow missed and whatnot. But
Dang,
there's
I wish.
a situation, with on Jamarl Thomas's podcast. If anybody follows him, there was a recent spat between Dimitri Lascaris, a Canadian socialist guy who used to be in the Green Party. He's a lawyer. Not really sure how socialist he is, but and this guy named KJ No, who's like a South Korean commentator who's a regular commentator on Jamarl's show. And the whole spat was like this stupid public scandal about because Dimitri was criticizing China for not doing enough about stopping the genocide in Gaza, which is that's a point of view that I hold in common with him. I totally agree that China has an obligation, according to international law, to do more to stop this genocide, and they are playing politics in a sense to not really have to fulfill that obligation because it benefits them.
And how would they fulfill the obligation?
Well, they would have to stop doing what they're doing with this tariff war or whatever, trying to pursue a win-win policy, which always sounds really good. Everybody wants a win-win, but you can't have a win-win situation with a person who sees everything as a zero-sum game. You cannot have a win-win relationship with the United States, period. That's kind of our Western Marxist kind of analysis. The U.S. does not have friends. It only has enemies, right?
Oh, so you're saying, so it would be something like, I can't remember which country it was, but they like cut off all ties with, I think it was Israel, like they stopped providing them with some export or something until the genocide is over. So you're saying like they should stop providing us with, they should stop exporting goods to us until the genocide.
There's so much more that they could be doing, right? Like they could have shut the Strait of Hormuz down, whatever, when push came to shove, right? But they've gone the softer route, for better or worse. So as far as when he's saying in that first video about turning away from Cold War narratives, how do you do that when one of the narratives I've come to understand as helpful to recognizing the reality that we're in is to understand that we are not in World War III because we have entered into Cold War 2.0 instead. But now I have to reject that because Xi Jinping tells me I'm not thinking right. So maybe I am wrong to have inculcated that concept into my mind or whatever. I don't know.
No, that was a really good point. That was a really good point that you made. Instead of like going through this trade war thing, this performance art with Trump, they should have cut the United States off altogether.
Because where does the United States they have to get their rare earth minerals refined? So what does the United States death machine depend on? China. So isn't that a serious problem for your revolutionary rhetoric about, being so much of a noble, whatever, player on the world stage?
And the military needs semiconductors.
Yeah. And they still advocate for a two-state solution, okay? To this day, not okay. So, yeah. I would love to be more, whatever, of a cheerleader for China. I wish that they were doing more of the things that I want them to do or whatever, but it's not about what I want or whatever. It's about what is the historically correct thing to do to move us towards communism, or is that just what you tell people so that you can hold power?
Yeah, so that's an excellent point, because he said we rise and fall together, but is he just talking about his country, or he's talking about the world? Because he said he was talking about the world. He didn't say he was just referring to his nation, right? So Yeah, that's a good point.
And with BRICS in particular, the whole thing is they're doing this balancing act of being about ending the American dollar hegemony and creating an alternative system. So how do you create an alternative system and rise and fall together? Is that not contradictory on it's the face of it? Somebody has to fall. If the U.S. has to fall,
someone has to fall. Someone has to fall, and if anybody would need to fall to bring peace to globally, it would be the U.S. and Israel. I mean, you can't have everything.
But I guess for now, I think what I would tentatively suggest is that China's biggest problem or mistake right now is to try too hard to have a win-win situation, right? Try to please everybody. What do we all know? You can't please everybody, but they're still trying.
Can't please everybody. Yeah, and how you doing, old man Barker?
Good to see you guys.
Your egregores is here too. All right, so I'm gonna keep going. It's only 4 more minutes.
Comrades and friends, the Chinese nation is the great nation that is never intimidated by any bullies and always values independence and forges ahead. In the past, when faced with critical struggles between good and evil, light and darkness, progress and reaction, the Chinese people rallied together to defy the enemy. They fought for the survival of the country, for the rejuvenation of the Chinese nation, and for justice of the whole humanity. Today, humanity again has to choose between peace and war, dialogue and confrontation, win-win cooperation and zero-sum game. The Chinese people firmly stand on the right side of history and the progress of human civilization. We will remain committed to the path of peaceful development and join hands with all peoples around the world in building a community with a shared future for humanity. The Chinese People's Liberation Army has been and will always be the heroic armed forces that the party and the people can fully trust and rely on. All service members should faithfully perform their sacred duties, speed up the building of a world-class military, and firmly safeguard China's sovereignty, unity, and territorial integrity. All service members should provide strategic support for the great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation and make greater contributions to the peace and development of the world.
You have a comment?
Well, it's just difficult for us to move towards peaceful development and respecting the international order and everything when that's all predicated on the UN, the Security Council with the 5 permanent members, that's inherently unfair to the rest of the world, which China happens to benefit from that kind of arrangement. But I mean, and although there's a very complicated history with the UN, China wasn't acknowledged by the UN for the longest time because they were the communist government and they wanted the other governments in power in China. But they have managed, because they're a big power, right, then they cannot be ignored by these big institutions. But if they were a smaller country, they would not be able to kind of take the positions they do. So I don't know.
Sean brings up an interesting point. He said he's heard 3 different translations of this speech. I'd be curious for you to tell us what the differences, the major differences you noticed in the translations, if you have that on deck.
That's a major problem. I appreciate you mentioning that, Sean, or whatever. As much as we're all relying on these machine translations to be accurate, and I highly doubt that even if they are technically accurate, we're probably missing a whole lot of context because you need, like, learning a language, you learn a lot of cultural expression that's not translated properly, right?
Correct. And fluctuations in the voice changes the meaning of some, like they could change the meaning of the same sentence. So,
but that kind of reinforces the value of experts and academics and whatnot. Like, you can only learn that kind of stuff through years of patient learning, and so you can't necessarily get smart quick, right?
I could hear them playing in the other room. Tossing and the little boy, he's so excited. Oh, yeah. He's running. He unlocked. What did you say? He unlocked another level to the video game.
Yeah.
Now he's walking. Yeah, okay, Jacqueline. I really don't like it when countries feel compelled to show off their military might. Yeah, it's weird. I mean, yeah, it's weird.
Well, what I find when you see those military parades, they make the countries all look the same. You know, whether it's, you know, a fascist marching with their goose stepping, or, you know, these communists or these Americans or whatever, then it's just a surface level, whatever, reactionary observation, I would say, but they just all look the same or whatever, the way that they do their marching drills. They have all be in those crisp uniforms, those expressionless military faces. All the militaries are kind of trained to act a similar way. They have to.
Well, I tell you who didn't. Well, I tell you, USA's military parade did not look the same. It was sad.
Yeah, that's a bad sign for the Americans that they can't even march right anymore.
Well, they can. It was a form of protest that they march out of sync. They can march.
To have an army that is doing a protest in a public event like that, that's not allowed for armies, right? You're supposed to have your loyalty in the right place. And if you can't tell where your loyalty is supposed to be, that's a crisis for the country.
Oh, hey, Wolfie. So it made me think about all these Second Amendment people who are like showing off their guns, and it's like, why? What is your purpose? To let us know you have weapons? Oh, okay.
Okay. Actually, that reminds me, it's good to question the significance of China's army if they only ever intend to use it for self-defense of their own nation, when they're talking about global cooperation and whatnot. But their army it has a lot to do with the Western versus Eastern kind of mindsets, right? So it's probably, there's some truth to the idea that when we look at what foreign intervention is supposed to be, we have a kind of a Western lens to that. So when we see an army or whatever, and we see a place like Palestine, because we've kind of been raised in this imperialist like nation, then we were taught that for humanitarian intervention, it's necessary and okay for an army to invade for the benefit of the people that we're invading, apparently. And that's kind of the imperialist logic. So then maybe if China's really onto something when they're saying we have a powerful army, but we refuse to use it in evil ways like you guys do in the name of something good. So, yeah.
Yeah. And Jacqueline, no, China doesn't spend nearly as much on their military budget. But, you know, this is completely off the subject. But it's like these three things that we were talking about made me think of this. Well, all the things you were saying, and I was saying, okay, so that guy in Minnesota, he was in Minnesota. He was, well, I guess it was she, trans, the one who shot up I can't even remember what they shot up. Oh, it was like a Catholic school or something like that. And in their manifesto, it said they didn't want to be trans anymore or something like that. But the thing is, the person was like 22, and the level of ammunitions and guns that they had I'm trying to figure out who the hell bought all these weapons for you. Like, this is not passing the smell test. It looks like a false flag. It has everything that you need, vilifying trans people, just a display of all these weapons. I mean, did your parents buy all these weapons for you? Are you a trust fund baby? Like, how the hell did you get all of these weapons? Who has the money for all of that?
Crypto, whatever. Maybe crypto is the answer as far as because honestly, some people, if they can gamble that system right, then they can have access to a bunch of money that they wouldn't otherwise be able to have for their class position. That's a good question. You know.
Yeah, it just made me think of that, about how, like, showing off your weapons, and and there was another piece to it, about translation, because someone had mentioned, if you look at that video that I think they took it down and they're trying to scrub the internet of it. There's like all these writings on all the weapons and all the magazines and stuff, and some of it is in another language. I don't know who said this, but they were saying that if you knew how to translate it, it was like saying "help me," and almost as if they were put up to doing this, or they're forced to do this, or something like that. I don't know.
Or something. Yeah.
But I don't know the language to verify if that's correct or not. And they've taken the videos down, so.
Yeah, it's hard to do that investigative, like real investigative journalism into like the psyops that are being done against us. It takes a lot of skills that we don't quite have. Hopefully, one day we can get there, but we're gonna have to kind of get some, I think, some mentorship from some of those and others in the independent media who do know some of how to do that kind of work.
Yeah. Yeah. And Jacqueline, yes, I'm babysitting again. You can hear the baby screaming. Tasha, the way I babysit with him, I'm so like gentle and kissy, and Tosh is like throwing him, picking him up, slamming him on the bed. He loves it. I'm just not that, I'm more
I get
the
nervous.
huggy type.
I see babies like they're made of glass too.
Yeah, she's like, oh, he'll just bounce back. So, okay. But he's in there screaming and laughing. Yeah, perhaps the difference. So now she's talking about the budget, the difference in the budget. So perhaps the difference is China's military spending is just about defense, whereas the U.S. and U.K.'s military spending is all about profits for the arms manufacturers. And I would add to that, and offensive measures to bring democracy or protect other people, or attack them before they attack us. But really, we're just stealing their resources.
Yeah.
Okay, so
shoot. I was just going to say, in general, China's spending tends to be like, so the story goes, that they only ever really pursue profit if it has some kind of use value. They're not really about profit for profit's sake. And so this would be where the critiques of China being capitalist, when you look at how they actually spend their money, that might be how you can kind of prove that China does have actual socialist characteristics. It's not just.
Yeah, and Rondo, I don't know. I think he's asking, was that trans woman's hair dyed? I don't know. I mean, the root was the same as the rest, so it could have been like new. Usually they don't dye the root. I don't know. I don't get my hair dyed, but this might be a good time to say, before I start this over again, like, share, subscribe. We're only 2 people away from 200 subscribers. Just 2.
Yay! And then we can set a goal, and we'll have to set a new goal. We'll go from what should be our next.
Yeah, that's our goal. Just 2.
You want to 300 to be our next goal, I guess. But.
Yep. All right. So there's only a minute and a half left.
Sure. Let's
Here we
see.
go.
History carries the legacy of the past and inspires the future. On a new journey in a new era, the Chinese people of all ethnic groups should, under the strong leadership of the Communist Party of China, follow Marxism, Leninism, Mao Zedong thought, Deng Xiaoping theory, the theory of three represents, and the scientific outlook on development, and fully implement the thoughts on socialism with Chinese characteristics for the new era. We should stay firmly on the path of socialism with Chinese characteristics and carry forward the great spirit of the war of resistance. We should press ahead with enterprise and resolve, and advance in unity the cause of building China into a great country on all fronts and realizing great national rejuvenation through China's modernization.
That's
I
good.
know you want to comment on that.
That's some good stuff to hear. I just wonder about when he's saying that we should be Marxist-Leninists and follow Mao Zedong thought and the Deng Xiaoping, whatever ideology. Are those all like completely compatible, like completely mutually inclusive and whatnot? Or are there some contradictions that happen when you try and marry those together? And he said a few things that actually I should look into more that I don't even know about, like the three representations.
The theory of three something. Yeah.
So I have some homework to do, but it's about having the time and the inclination to do it, I guess. So I do need to learn more about China before I go turning against them, right?
Oh yeah, I remember when Robert asked, "Were you?" I forgot what he asked. Oh, were you from Russia or something? And we weren't able to say it, but it was because they saw your flag in the back. I forgot to mention that.
Well, I did say that I could have easily been Russian. I think we did get a chance to respond to that, and then I said,
"Is this true?" I'm sorry,
nice.
you all.
Oh, nice. Is that Snow Himbo's alt account? Cool. Nice to see you if that's you, buddy.
You're not my buddy guy. So I wish we had a sound machine, but like I feel like that's so gimmicky, but it's kind of fun too.
Yeah, everyone else has got these soundboards, all in good time. It's just we're real slow moving over here.
Yeah, we're slow moving over here. And Jacqueline said, "Thank you so much for that. We really appreciate it. Now we got to set a new goal. Slow down, partner." Jacqueline wants to know that are we gonna have a special show when we hit 1,000 subscribers? We need to have a party again.
Yeah, we could definitely do that. Yeah, we could start doing more for our show, like bonus content. We might consider expanding it 2 days a week or something. I've been thinking about updating the music, the intro and the outro, maybe some of our imagery, whatever. But that's kind of like, when am I gonna find the time, right? So I may need to kind of work a little less at my job. So.
Lance is up for another dance party, and yes, Jacqueline, I think if you have alternate accounts, I mean that's still, I don't know. I assume it is. I don't know.
Yeah, I think so.
I have alternate accounts. I've never tried. I should try that.
I'm a little too lazy, I guess, to have my little spy accounts so that I can go spy on people and who I am. But that's kind of useful, I think. Some people would say there's pragmatic. If you want to be doing some revolutionary stuff, you can't do it all openly with your official name and everything. I don't think I'm going to be able to pick up the skills to be smooth enough to stay sneaky. So I'm just going to be out in the open, okay?
Yeah, okay. It's only 20 seconds left, so I'm assuming there's going to be a mic drop at the end. Want to hear it? Here you go.
The great rejuvenation of the Chinese nation is irresistible. The noble cause of peace and development of humanity will prevail.
Okay. There we
That's
have
where
it.
I really hope that the tendency towards nationalism is not like a mistake that we've made as socialists or would-be communists and whatnot, because I feel like nationalism tends to kind of be more useful to the right wing, and like we use it because they use it and not so much because we want to. But we're trying to get kind of past like defining ourselves maybe by nationality, because there's a whole lot of research always in all these topics, but I wonder who invented the concept of nationalism and why, or whatever. Who has it benefited historically? I feel like it sprung up around the same time as capitalism, and it was kind of like those two ideas are interrelated. Maybe I'm wrong about that.
No, I think there's some truth to that. I was like thinking into my. I think there's some truth to that, but then you could be. I mean, I don't know.
It's all complicated. It's not easy to have like there's no easy answer with that stuff.
Okay, so I'm gonna you're organized, you're ready.
Well, yeah, I had something I was gonna share here. So kind of going back to because in the title I put partners, not rivals, or red-brown alliance. So because this is where my work on trying to understand Indian politics has led me to conclude that BJP is the proxy party for the fascists. That's where they're putting their eggs in the basket for their political maneuverings, right? So then they intentionally created this confusion as to like the BJP is not the RSS, so the BJP is not fascist, is it? But if it's being run by all these fascists, whatever, then how is it acceptable for us if we've just established that China really is as red can be? Then someone tell me why this isn't a red-brown alliance, or whatever. And historically, we're not supposed to be supportive of those, or whatever. Everyone kind of tries to do their best to point out how Stalin only did the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact with Hitler out of real politic pragmatism. You know, it wasn't really about abandoning like the pursuit of communism in any way. Whatever, he was just doing what he had to do to preserve the Union, or whatever, and the revolutionary potential, blah blah blah. But it's never a good look, whatever, when you say we are the opposite of these bad guys, or whatever. But when we find it useful, we're going to work with them hand in hand. So let's try to understand the importance of hypocrisy, I would say. So this is from the National Herald, India.com. And the article says, Modi government not quite fascist yet, says the CPIM, the Communist Party of India Marxist, because of course, if you ever looked into the history of Marxism, there's always a party, and then there's always a split from the party, and then there's always, oh, you're not the real Marxist, I am, blah, blah, blah. So the CPIM's draft political resolution for its 24th Party Congress in Madurai in April 2025 has triggered a political storm in Kerala and beyond. So I would say right now, it's probably fair to say that politics in India are kind of like all over the place, like in some uncharted waters, maybe, you know. In 2018, CPIM's political resolution at the 22nd Party Congress in Hyderabad.
Can you make that bigger? Yes, thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
No worries.
In 2018, the CPIM's political resolution at the 22nd Party Congress in Hyderabad stated that the BJP government under Modi was showing fascist tendencies. 4 years later, in 2022, at the 23rd Party Congress in Kannur, the resolution held that the government was implementing the fascist agenda of the RSS. Therefore, the draft political resolution for the 24th Party Congress in Madurai, slated for April 2025, stoked the political controversy by using the term neo-fascism, not fascism. It's all so great that we have such debates over, is it fascist or neo-fascist, whoever. Oh, let's just call it fascist, why don't we, whatever, right? That's kind of my tendency. But the draft approved by the Central Committee in its meeting in Kolkata in January reads, the Modi government's push to impose a reactionary Hindutva agenda and the authoritarian drive to suppress the opposition and democracy demonstrates neo-fascist characteristics, which kind of reminds me of like the whole debate over how fascist is Trump really, whatever. I think the whole point to get to an answer is to look at the agenda that they're implementing and see how close to fascism is the agenda that they're implementing, regardless of whether the political party implementing the agenda is technically fascist, according to whether they overtly express themselves to be so, whatever. So to add to the confusion, the CPIM's ideological mouthpiece in Malayalam, Chinta, has come out with a clarificatory note in its latest issue this week. The present political system under BJP RSS is a Hindutva corporate overbearing regime which exhibits neo-fascist characteristics. We do not say that the Modi government is fascist or neo-fascist. We do not depict the Indian government as a neo-fascist regime. So this is where I think they've done some mental gymnastics to the point where they've made whatever their public statement was supposed to be essentially meaningless, because they're trying to speak out of both sides of their mouth by saying that the government is neo-fascist, but we're not going to call it a neo-fascist regime, whatever. Like, what did you accomplish with that fucking statement? So semantics is important for communist parties, and the draft resolution will have taken several hours of deliberation to finalize. Each word is carefully discussed and finalized. Therefore, the departure from the path did not go unnoticed. The clarificatory note in the party mouthpiece made it worse, with most people, including party members, asking why the party has deviated from the path. While the resolution admits that the government is implementing the fascist agenda of the RSS, does it make sense to say that the government is not fascist? Questioned in many in party circles. So I would say, why would they feel the need to try and do this confusion? It has everything to do with Modi is trying to cozy up with China, and they know, as Indian politicians in their own country, whatever, having had to deal with RSS and BJP, whatever, trying to take power from them, they recognize the really difficult stance that they're in. They want closer economic cooperation between India and China, but they understand that they need that cooperation to happen between Modi's party on their behalf. And then if Modi's party is excessively influenced by fascists, that means that they then have to flirt with a red-brown alliance in order for the grand political scheme to work or whatever. So they're kind of getting some flack by the other parties who have decided not to go down that slippery slope or whatever. I think the CPI that's not got the M in brackets or whatever. So while the draft has been circulated to its state units and will have to be ratified by the party Congress in April, it has generated a heated debate in Kerala's political circles and beyond. Some political observers concluded that the departure signals a more pragmatic approach, looking at broader political alliances. So others point to the nuanced view that while the BJP and RSS exhibit authoritarian tendencies, CPIM does not see the Indian state itself as structurally transformed into a fascist entity. So it gets down to how do you, when you're talking about like political science or whatever, how do you say what's objectively happening? Because it tends to be mostly subjective what people's conclusions end up being. So thoughts on that?
Interesting. So, okay, how do you it's a thin line between we're going to be partners and not rivals, between China and India, and partnering with a fascist regime like this. It's pretty hard to pull off.
Right. Well, and then from what I've learned, like the RSS does all kinds of the anti-democratic stuff in order to ensure that the BJP wins stuff. So like they go around, they're like changing the laws to make it so you can arrest the opposition for kind of bullshit things. Like the stuff that we typically, if you see a Western regime doing it, you would say, oh, that's a fascist tendency or whatever. But because you're looking for to make geopolitical alliances, I find people they're going to be a little bit selective with what they criticize and whatnot.
I mean, do you want? I had this article about how India and China are becoming partners and not rivals. I haven't read it. I mean, maybe they're going to explain how they're going to do that. They're deepening trust between each other.
I mean, I fully hope that they actually do. I think it is one of those things that they're correct to kind of hope to see succeed. I wonder if like they've actually dealt with the contradictions properly to actually make it succeed instead of having this be a little bit like wishful thinking. Because if India were run by communists and so was China, then I would be like I would not have no criticisms whatsoever. The reason why I have pods is because I know that India is run by very much not communists. Okay, so what are their objectives and what are the clashes? What's the cognitive dissonance between them and the Chinese and the Russians, and et cetera, et cetera. So, and if you're kind of having your rose-colored glasses on and you're just being a cheerleader, I think it's going to be hard to actually acknowledge what are the contradictions between the parties that will undo the promises that they're making. So I think one of the things was that I thought China was like advocating that we bolster and support the World Trade Organization in sort of for everyone to play fairly by the rules or whatever. We have to respect the rules of the World Trade Organization. But I think one of the things that the RSS doesn't want is for India to be respecting the World Trade Organization. So is that going to be a point of contention that they have to work out?
Sean says you're spot on.
Thanks, man.
I'm about to read this, but someone is trolling in the chat, and they've changed your name to.
That's what I'm talking about. I'd love to be a Marxist-Leninist, but there's other people who claim that name too, and they are quite ridiculous fools in so many ways. And then there's like, yeah, I'll just leave it at that.
Jackson, I was just thinking about this. I watch because Jackson Twinkhole is he's like a closet Trump supporter. I mean, it feels like that sometimes.
That's what I'm saying. The ACP, whatever, Jackson and his best buddy Hawes and their three amigos, the Midwestern Marxists there. They're kind of an embarrassment, I feel like, but they have yet to recognize that what they've done is embarrassing, right? They're completely unironically committed to this Marxist-Leninist ideal, and then they go around supporting someone like Alexander Dugin, who's got this whole history of being a fascist in Russia and stuff. And so it's like, yeah, and then you go looking the other way for all of Jackson's kind of immature behavior on Twitter and everything, because that's how you have to appeal to the masses these days, being as undialectic as possible or whatever, and being a postmodernist kind of moron,
He has great hair though.
Yeah, so that's all that matters, right? Appearances and not actual substance, right? You'd have a purity fetish if you worried about substance over appearance. So.
MAGA communism. I watched Jimmy Dore's it's not special because it's on YouTube. Grab him by the coochie. I don't know. I'm just getting more and more convinced that he actually does like Trump. I'm getting more and more convinced. But anyway, the special is just a compilation of jokes that he's said on his show. So,
I haven't watched Jimmy
save somebody an hour.
Yeah.
Okay, so here we go. China and India pledged to be partners, not rivals. And you can hear me pretty good, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I try to keep this mic real close now. The leaders of China and India say there is now deepening trust between them after years of tension that includes a long-running border dispute. China's President Xi Jinping and Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi met on the sidelines of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, or SCO, in the port city of Tianjin. It is Modi's first time in China in 7 years. Xi told Modi that China and India should be partners, not rivals. You said that already. Okay, while Modi said there was now an atmosphere of peace and stability between them, Russian President Vladimir Putin is also at the summit, attended by more than 20 world leaders, which this year has been overshadowed by trade wars with the U.S. Oh my goodness, after yawn. Excuse me. U.S. President Donald Trump has imposed steep tariffs on Indian goods as punishment for Delhi's continued purchase of Russian oil, and Putin faces threats of sanctions for his ongoing war on Ukraine. As the U.S.-India relationship faces increasing headwinds, Modi is moving closer to Xi. Both countries are not only the most populous, but also have two of the largest economies in the world. All that winning we're doing. Modi announced that flights between India and China, suspended since deadly troop clashes on their shared Himalayan border in 2020, would resume without providing a timeline. Xi said both sides need to approach and handle our relationship from a strategic height and long-term perspective, and that it is the right choice for both sides to be friends. The SCO summit itself is largely symbolic, but will allow leaders to air common grievances and shared interests. It comes days before a massive military parade in Beijing that will mark the 80 years since the end of World War II. There are 10 states in the grouping, including Russia, Pakistan, and Iran, and 16 dialogue partners and observers. Putin, who is a close ally of China, arrived for a red carpet welcome in Tianjin on Sunday. So, it was just really stupid to start these dumb trade wars, knowing the alliances, the new formation. It's not new, but the formation of BRICS, plus with all these other alliances, they have the biggest economies in the world. Like, what did you think was going to happen?
Yeah.
It was, I mean, you're just making your base happy, but they have most of them have no understanding of foreign policy. I mean, they think going to college is indoctrination. Why do most people that go to college, why do they vote Democrat? They're surely getting indoctrinated.
Well, it would be nice if people who went to Harvard would come out of there a little bit more radical. The only person I've ever seen who goes to a school like that who actually says anything worth listening to is like Richard Wolff. The vast majority of people go into some of those colleges. I think there's some indoctrination, at least partial, that's happening there. You're not allowed to make it up in the academic ranks if you're too anti-capitalist.
Right. The Ivy Leaguers those are the ones that go into the government. So it's obvious why they vote Republican by the masses.
Yeah. But higher education is still very important and needs to be, I guess, purged of those awful brainwashing tendencies. But how do you do that?
Yeah, it's like, I don't know, maybe because you can't turn in papers without evidence. You have to turn in your sources. Like, you can't just say shit.
Who decides what source is an authoritarian source, whatever, a source that's allowed to be trusted? It's funny.
I mean, you still have to have some type of sources of where you're getting your information from.
Yeah, you have to have
not just because I say so.
Yeah, you have to have this like old-fashioned kind of way of how do you go about doing research, whatever. There is like a whole methodology that they teach that if you're not using that methodology, whatever, you're not really doing real research. So some of that can be some gatekeeping, but it's also essential for ensuring that you're actually providing accurate information, and not just whatever bullshit shit that you made up. So, hello, Django X1.
Django. All right, so do you have some more articles, or?
Sure, I'll go to another article here if you're ready to move on.
We have 15 people in here, so while you're doing that, I'm just going to say, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Do all the things.
So part of to determine that a red-brown alliance is actually not happening would be to kind of analyze the contemporary.
Oh, that's me. Hold on.
Oh, sorry.
That's me. Okay, now you can add yours.
Okay. So if we want to analyze the current relationship between the RSS and the BJP under Modi, that might help us understand if there's any split going on between the RSS or whatever, if their influence is not as powerful as it used to be, and then that might give some credibility as to why it makes sense to be pragmatic and try and make an alliance or whatever with a party that is in the process of trying to distance itself from the fascists, apparently. So, but this is one of those, like, what is political theater and what is genuine cracks in alliances and whatnot. So this was from no, go on, Bella. 2024. So it is an old article, but it is still quite recent. All these big multipolar power struggle things, these take years to play out. So articles from 2024 are still very relevant today. So Modi's tussle with the RSS echoes old power struggles within India's Hindu right. And it seems like we don't really get to see who the author is. Like Himal South Asian, yeah, nice last name. So, or Abhishek Day, I don't know. Anyway.
Can you make it bigger?
On the 5th of September, Mohan Bhagwat, the head of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, said at an event in Pune, if one has to rise to such a height, one should make efforts. We should not consider ourselves as gods. Let people decide if there is God in you. The Hindu nationalist RSS is the ideological parent of India's ruling Bharatiya Janata Party, that's what the BJP stands for, and was the first political home of the Indian Prime Minister, the BJP's Narendra Modi. Bhagwat's remark was perceived as a dig at Modi. During his campaign for the Indian general election earlier this year, Modi told a television channel that he had become convinced that his energy cannot come from a biological body and that he was an instrument of God. Always makes me very confident to put my trust in a leader who says that kind of thing, right? It seems like he's got his head on his shoulders very squarely, and he's not got a cult of personality at all, and he's not a narcissist at all or anything like that, or whatever. We can trust Modi or whatever. We can trust Xi Jinping, who trusts Modi, because Modi's whatever not full of this kind of dog whistling to Hindu like anti-reality perspectives or whatever. We want to say we should be more scientific or whatever is one of the things he's saying in that video, right? One of Modi's things that he likes to do or whatever is be extremely anti-scientific or whatever with trying to validate some of like the Hindu mythology stuff as if it were real when it's just fucking nonsense, okay? Yeah, you got to push back against the religious fanaticism sometimes, right? Sorry. But yeah, not that sorry necessarily.
You're not sorry at all.
I'm sorry, but yeah, I say that. I'm Canadian. What do you expect me to say? This was the third time.
It's about being nice.
Sorry. This was the third time that Bhagwat had taken on Modi in public after the election. In June, a week after the results were announced, Bhagwat addressed RSS volunteers in Nagpur. where the organization is headquartered, he said that a true Savak, or servant, did not have arrogance and worked without causing any hurt to others, and that decorum was not maintained during the election campaign. Although Bhagwat did not name anyone, his remarks were broadly perceived to be directed at Modi, and were unlikely to have gone unnoticed by the top leadership of BJP. Modi had been sworn in as Prime Minister for the third consecutive time only a day earlier on the 10th of June. In mid-July, Bhagwat said at a public event in Jharkhand that men aim to become supermen, then Devtas or deities, then Bhagwan or a god, and then Vishwarup or omnipresent. This was again seen as a veiled reference to Modi's earlier remarks about having non-biological energy. Bhagwat added that instead of such aspirations, people should work towards the welfare of humanity. This is where you can see that even contemporary fascists are still kind of using language that socialists would also use, or whatever. We're also talking about working towards the welfare of humanity, or whatever. Like some of Xi Jinping's boilerplate statements were basically about the welfare of humanity, right? But we have very different ideas about what is the welfare of humanity when you're talking about the fascist idea of what that means versus the communist. And we should not get those confused. Historically, the BJP's rise to prominence and its electoral successes have depended heavily on the RSS mobilizing and campaigning in its favor. However, since 2014, when Modi first won national power, the BJP has increasingly run presidential-style campaigns for Indian parliamentary elections with Modi front and center. In 2024, the party once again lent heavily on Modi's massive cult of personality. Full promises were packaged as Modi's guarantees, and party officials as well as ministers went as far as to add Modi Ka Parivar, Modi's family, to their social media profile. So there is this kind of it seems like there's a recognition in Indian politics that the RSS has too much power over the BJP, and anyone who knows anything, looking at the situation, whatever, knows that you can't exactly trust the BJP to be independent. So if they want to appeal to the voters that are maybe ambivalent about the RSS, they have to make it the BJP look like it's standing on its own 2 feet. So I feel like that's Modi's circle that's supporting him, or whatever. That's their kind of tactic, or whatever. But I'm not convinced that they really intend to break with the RSS. I feel like this is just public posturing for the public. And then in behind closed doors, they're also doing some posturing for the RSS, whatever, saying, this is what we have to do to get the people on our side so that we can betray them later, whatever. Trust us, whatever. We're not really throwing you guys under the bus, RSS, whatever. We just need you guys to take a step back because you guys are making us look bad. But we need you, whatever. So I don't know, hard to say. It would be nice if we had like an Indian comrade that we could have on to discuss about this stuff one day. So
that'd be nice.
During the campaign, the BJP president Jagat Prakash Nadda said that the party had grown since the time that it needed the RSS and was now capable of running its own affairs. The BJP won 240 parliamentary seats, down from 303 seats in the last general election in 2019. It was the first time since 2014 that the party failed to secure a majority on its own in the 543-member lower house of parliament, forcing it to rely on allies to form a coalition government. Bhagwat's comments were therefore seen as both a chastisement and a reality check for Modi and the BJP, which had predicted that it would win at least 370 seats alone and 400 along with its allies. So this is kind of a bit, this paragraph is useful in understanding that the BJP decided that they were capable of running their own affairs, so they tried not to rely on the RSS as much in the 2019 election, and they failed to secure the majority that they would have gotten with the RSS support. So now they have to rely on a coalition government, and this Bhagwat guy is trying to point out to everybody that, see, without them, whatever, the party's not strong. So Mohan Bhagwat was holding a mirror to Modi, DK Singh, political editor at the print, told me. When he talked about ahankar, or arrogance, he was obviously referring to self-obsessive I, me, Modi-focused politics and governance. The RSS believes in collective we, in what it calls its character-building and nation-building mission. The RSS leadership has been uncomfortable for some time now with Modi outgrowing the organization's influence and with Modi sidelining top RSS leaders during his decade as prime minister. It's no secret that Bhagwat has not had the best of relationships with Modi for many years now. Dhirendra K. Jha, a journalist and writer following the RSS, said, however, if you look at the entire RSS, the bottom level and mid-level people seem very happy with Modi, whom they see as a leader capable of delivering Hindu Rashtra, the RSS's much desired Hindu nation. Whatever tension that emerges occasionally is at the top level. So this, I think, is also an important paragraph. Whatever kind of bickering that they seem to be having with their top echelons of power there, if the base is happy with Modi, should we consider Modi to be a fascist or not? If the base of people that come from the fascist organization that supports him are happy with him delivering on their Hindu nationalist, fascist dream. So as far as like cooperation with Pakistan and India are not good, whatever, never like they're like mortal enemies or whatever. And for them to cooperate with China, they're going to kind of have to drop this animosity to Pakistan, but the RSS will not let them do that. So I wonder how that's going to play out.
I mean, if the populace wants fascism, I just can't imagine populace does. But you never know. I mean, there's some people in America that want fascism. They trust their dear leader.
This is the difference between talking about politics in India versus in like the United States, because there's like 1 billion people there. So even if there's like 100 million people who want fascism, that doesn't mean that the majority of the population wants fascism. But you could still have a sizable, whatever, dangerous segment of the population that is kind of forcing the majority like to not have a say, because the majority is like not hard line enough to really fight back in a sense, right? We see how in Ukraine, whatever, the Nazis took power in Ukraine because they're the small percent that were really fascist, whatever, were willing to go farther than anyone else were willing to go. So they were kind of able to dictate terms to everyone else because no one was willing to kind of fight them on the fascist terms or whatever. So
basically like what we have with Republicans, like here in the United States. I feel like, I mean, our elected officials, they'll write a strongly worded letter. They'll get that done. But anything beyond that, I think we're fucked.
Yeah, like that implementation of Project 2025. If you want to actually see that like killed before it can be implemented, a lot more hardcore kind of action is needing to happen. And so far, there's a lot more of a kind of a liberal, we can have some wishful thinking and wish it away, whatever. We're just gonna be nice, and people are going to side with us because we're nice, and they're the icky, bad, mean people, and they're just gonna naturally be turned off by how mean they are. They're gonna side with us. That's not a fucking solution. That's not a strategy.
Rondo makes a good point. That Democrats are fascists too. Don't get it twisted now. Don't get too confused. Yep. They just have to go. They have to go about it in a different way.
They've got a whole really intricate kind of. It's really nasty arrangements that they have there, where like the good cop, bad cop thing. They got the overt fascist and the covert fascist, right? So this is where, if you want to compare, we can make comparisons between nations, whatever, like India and the U.S. But I don't know how much there is an equivalent in India that you could point to, like the Democratic Party. But maybe somebody knows more about Indian politics. They can say that Congress Party that has had a lot of power for a lot of years. That's your Democratic Party. They have a party called the Congress Party in India, and that's, I feel like, the big tent for socialists and stuff. But it's probably like the Social Democratic Party. Or
Democratic I don't know enough about their politics. So like Jacqueline has, I don't know if you can answer this. So she says, what is the voting system like in India? Is there full democracy on paper but not in practice? Because some groups have obstacles put in their way to prevent them from voting.
So I don't necessarily know enough about the technical aspects of how the system works in India, but basically you're correct in that there is full democracy on paper, but not really in practice. And
yeah, go ahead. Yeah. Sorry. I was just about to say, like, that's kind of how it is in America.
Because like you're saying, some groups have obstacles put in their way to prevent them from voting. And it's the RSS and the BJP that they use their like their apolitical influence to influence politics, whatever. They like the RSS is it's like that organization that'll go beat the candidates into not running or something, right? Or to try and change the votes in a district, whatever. They'll kind of terrorize the people in those neighborhoods to get the outcome that they want. And so would you call that democracy? Obviously not, right? But then what they're doing is intimidating people from even participating into exerting the rights that they do have, that the left in India has won for them over. Like it's always a tug of war, right? Over time, whenever the left gets in power, they manage to install some policies that are beneficial to people, more democratic. And when the right gets in power, they do their best to take those away. So,
but nobody has the hindrance like the Electoral College. I think we're the only ones in the world, if I'm not mistaken.
The U.S. system is a whole nother, whatever, a whole new beast, you know.
It's ridiculous. Yes. In the Senate, I mean, we should abolish the Senate the way it's structured.
Yeah.
It's not
but
good.
That creates a power vacuum, and that's one of these things that people are afraid of, you know. So it might be kind of necessary to have a power vacuum as far as the lesser of two evils, whatever, if that's what you need to have, as opposed to this unipolarity of imperialism, then I guess a power vacuum is what we were looking for. But then everyone knows the problems of those, whatever. You never know what you're gonna get, whatever who's gonna fill the void. So.
Yep, I'm busying myself because I was looking for the Discord so I could add in the chat.
Oh sure.
Can I change this? No. I wish you could make the Discord like a vanity link. Who has time to look at this and remember it? But anyway, if you haven't joined the Discord, come on by. Come hang out with us.
Yeah. The more the merrier. If you wanted to share with us any links or something, that would be a good place to do it. If you want to have more in-depth discussion about stuff we're awfully wrong about, whatever, go ahead and join us. And you feel free to leave after if you want to or something or whatever. But if you want to really communicate dialectically or something, that's the Discord's a good place for that.
So. Why you had to call us wrong off the bat?
I'm just saying a lot of this kind of topic when we're delving into like the Marxist-Leninists and the multipolarity and stuff like that, whatever. There's all kinds of controversial takes, and you're not adhering to the proper math line or whatever. So it's just hard to. We're a little too novice maybe to take on this kind of. I expect to be a bit wrong on some of this because my political education is a bit lacking as of yet. I might sound like I know a lot of what I'm talking about, whatever, but there's so much more to learn. It's ridiculous. I'm a little overwhelmed, you know.
You can't know it all. But look, it doesn't matter because they're cooking up meth in the chat anyway. Apparently. Apparently. They're cooking up meth in the chat.
Oh no, not that old thing. Whatever, that awful Nazi drug. Stay away from that one. That's my take on that one.
Yeah. Well, in Louisiana, like right up the street is It's a lot of meth going on in Louisiana. You'd be shocked.
Well, it's pretty sad that we can, from all the way from Louisiana. Right. Well,
Go
since we're
ahead.
talking about it, you got a meth problem in Louisiana. We got the same problem in Windsor, okay? Which means it's pretty bad, widespread, from head to toe. Right? We got it all over.
I thought y'all had a heroin problem.
No,
you have a
we
meth
got a fentanyl and a meth problem in this.
Fentanyl and meth. Dang. I just never understood, like,
the growing problem lately, whatever. That's what people have moved on to. Right?
I don't know. I'm too chicken. I'm way too chicken to be.
Yeah, I'm not hardcore enough for that.
Oh, I didn't mean to do that. I don't know the answer to that, Lance.
Now we're to cook up the mess or whatever in chat.
Lance was like, "Ooh, let me know," because Oh, okay. Do you have any more to share? I'm getting tired.
Yeah,
I was tired already.
A lot more
that baby wears me out, boy. Whew.
Oh yeah. I love kids or whatever, but I don't know if I'll be able to have another one because I just don't have the energy anymore. But I wanted to maybe talk a little bit about, because this idea of multipolarity is like a lot older than people realize maybe. So I wanted to touch on like Alexander Dugin. I mentioned a bit earlier before when I was talking about the ACP there. He's talked about this Indian concept called Akhand Bharat, which is similar to the Greater Israel kind of idea. Sounds like fascist expansionism to me, but he makes pains in this maybe this interview that I'll share with you so that you can play the video. I just find it problematic. Like people want to deny the fascism in Russia, kind of. Like there's a whole conversation we have not had about is Russia under Putin have any fascist tendencies? Because that's kind of the Marxist-Leninist has always been no. That's kind of an unfair characterization. But we gotta kind of go there maybe in another episode coming up soon because there does seem to be, like, first of all, there is a history of fascism in Russia, right? There are definitely organizations that have had the unmistakable association there with other fascists around the world and whatnot. And then when you understand what they're talking about with the whole supporting the traditional cultures and like it's tricky because a lot of the fascists in Russia or whatever may have saw the pragmatic necessity of joining the Communist Party of the Soviet Union, and some of them I think were quite instrumental in causing its downfall because they had to be like covert fascists infiltrating the party, right? And then it kind of explains like how was Russia so able to be sold off to the West with the fall of the USSR? It's because these people who kind of were running the government in the 90s, potentially some of them were fascists, right? So, but that's hard to do without doing the homework to talk about things properly. So, I don't know. I don't think I shared. What's that?
Rondo said with these czars.
Well, there's a camp of people in Russia that wants to restore the czars, and they don't look like they're getting much support right anymore. But then there's just other more pragmatic or whatever, not monarchists, or you don't have to be a monarchist to be a fascist in a sense, right? But there's always a similarity between them because the monarchists are essentially a dictator, and fascists like dictators, right? So,
fascists love dictators.
But when you talk about Alexander Dugin and people say, oh, he's not really fascist, he's like a post-fascist or whatever. He's got this fourth political theory or whatever, where he's saying we got to move past capitalism and past communism and past fascism. We'll come up with a brand new thing that's got nothing to do with any of those things. Well, I think that's kind of wishful thinking or whatever. And then he's made it a public career out of being associating himself with Martin Heidegger, who was a literal member of the Nazi Party or whatever. He was like a philosopher of the Nazis, right? They kind of need those like people to actually create the Nazi ideology, and those people would be philosophers, right? So that's a huge red
Oh,
flag for me that Alexander Dugin's going to go be a supporting a Nazi philosopher or whatever with his writings, and then people are going to deny that Putin's got this association with Dugin, and that's like those are red flags to a lot of leftists, like not liberals or whatever, actual leftists. So I'm sort of kind of say maybe there's
to clarify.
Sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, I thought you were done. Sorry. To clarify, so he's not talking about like the modern day czar, like a border czar or drug czar. He was talking about the historical czar with the emperor of Russia and Bulgaria. So I don't know what years those were, but like back in the Russian Empire, you know what I'm talking about.
I think it's tricky as far as how terms are supposed to be properly used. You might try to kind of expand the definition of fascism or beyond what is reasonable or whatever. So the Russian Tsars might have been what you might call like proto-fascist or something, but like fascism to me is something of a direct response to like communist ideology, where the communists started coming up with their class analysis and class warfare, and then the ruling class, the bourgeois, they created this reactionary ideology to suppress communism. And so like feudalism that comes before fascism, it seems very fascist to us in our modern times, but back then there was no such thing as fascism. No one had really thought of what was happening in those terms as of yet. So it's kind of an interesting exercise to say whatever, like Rondo was saying, fascism is the natural ruling order of the Roman Empire at any time. So I can kind of I see where you're coming from. I can agree with that in a sense, but then to be overly technical and what is completely, utterly, objectively true, or whatever, it gets you get pedantic or whatever about trying to really parse out the meaning of these terms. So I would say pedantic. Rome imperialism, whatever.
It's a big word.
Lenin has this whole interpretation of imperialism that's like made by him in a sense. But before I learned about Lenin's imperialism, I kind of looked at the ancient empires of back in the day, like Persia and Rome and Egypt and stuff, as like imperialist powers. But that's not the same kind of imperialism or whatever. Lenin wouldn't maybe call those empires imperialist. I'm not sure. So I keep saying that this episode, so my bad. But what was I shared with you that video link. Are we gonna play that a little bit? With,
yep, I have it. So, and yes, Rondo, czar is derived from the Latin term Caesar. That is correct. I'll just put that comment up there.
So another comment just to preface the video, the Dugin video there, is this Russia-India-China alliance has been an idea kind of pitched by the Russians for a long time. And it seems like it's kind of coming to fruition, for better or worse. And so this is where I'm saying, I think the post-Soviet Russians, whatever, have this idea of the Chinese-Russian-Indian alliance, and that's not necessarily a communist alliance. That's kind of an idea that the oligarchy in the East has, as far as how to supplant the oligarchy in the West as the dominant, whatever, world order.
Okay, I'm sorry.
You can hit play now if you like.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm getting a text about the baby. Okay. Here we go.
As one of the most influential Russian thinker, Professor Dugin has dominated the intellectual world with his predicative vision in the field of geopolitics. As a philosopher, political scientist, and strategist, Professor Dugin's work challenges West-dominated narratives, advocating for a multipolar world and Eurasian integration. His ideas have resonated with policymakers, scholars, and intellectuals globally, sparking critical discussions on geopolitics, international relations, and culture.
Say again?
It was only, sorry, at 47 seconds. And we could have just skipped to 1 minute in so that we avoided the tongue bath that he gives them about how.
Oh, okay. Yeah, this is an hour long, so I'm
not planning to play the whole thing. I just wanted to see that people like that this is interviews from 2024, so he's actively supporting this greater India idea, but he's also he's quick to cover his tracks and say that it's not about expansionism or whatever, but he's sort of saying that the neighboring nations around India should sort of look towards India as their cultural, like their origin of their cultures or whatever. Like their nations are more like a part of Indian civilization as opposed to outright nations of their own. And it's a very paternalistic, condescending kind of attitude. It's always these big powers that have these big ideas, right?
Notice I can't wait to hear this.
Yeah, go ahead.
No, you're fine. I'm just like the arrogance in that, but it's saying something like that.
Bangladesh would never have an idea about saying like India and China and all these other countries around us, whatever, should take lessons from us because their civilization comes out of us, or whatever, right? Like this is where the concept of the racialization of civilization is actually a very good topic, whatever, a more academic kind of angle to take it, whatever. But that's kind of what this is all based on, whatever, is looking at civilization through the lens of race, which is very problematic. I would hope people would understand intuitively, right?
And he's saying all this while he's wearing a Western suit.
Exactly.
That's kind of funny. Okay, so he just asked, what are your views on Akan Bharat? I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly.
Bharat, how it can affect the global political scenario for the betterment of undeveloped and developing countries.
So first of all, we need to say some words about multipolar vision. Multipolarity is philosophy. I have dedicated to Theory of Multipolar World one book that is manual for Russian institutions and academies, and then a recent book dedicated as well on multipolarity that is already remarks on realization of multipolar project in the institutional level as BRICS, as the change of the balance of power worldwide, so on the world scale. So to speak about multipolarity, in order to speak about multipolarity, we need to accentuate, to emphasize the most important aspect of it. So multipolar world vision is based on new actor in international relations, not on the nation states, as was the case in the Westphalian system, but we should deal with state civilization or civilizational states. That is totally new actor, and that was already somehow described in the Huntington article Clash of Civilizations. And civilization is new actor of international relations. But what is, in that sense, civilization as political actor on the level of international politics? That is civilization as not only as cultural entity, but as political body based on the community of the same culture. So civilizational state is something totally new. We don't know it if we consider history, because multipolarity is something absolutely new. That is not just return to bipolarity.
Civilizations are the oldest concepts, or whatever.
This word salad, and he just keeps talking in circles.
this is the thing about fascists, though, is that their theory or whatever, their philosophy is inherently irrational, and they're not really, like, if they tried harder to be more rational about the way that they understand things, they would inevitably have to be more socialistic in their conclusions. So in order to avoid being socialist, they avoid being rationalist. Maybe that's a confirmation bias or whatever from my end or something, but
I don't know. I just want to make sure I'm just trying to figure out what he's saying. Like, it's okay. So
you might have a hard time. I see Macy came in the middle, so she's still trying to figure out what's going on. I'm sorry, you might have to kind of watch from the beginning on this one. You might not figure it out without someone explaining.
What's going on is he's talking out of his ass right now. But we're gonna let him keep talking. Let's see. Why won't it play? Look, it didn't. Nobody
remarks on realization of multipolar project in the institutional level as BRICS, as changing the change of the balance of power worldwide. So on the world scale, so to speak about multipolarity, in order to speak about multipolarity, we need to accentuate, to emphasize the most important aspect of it. So multipolar world vision is based on new actor in international relations, not on the nation states, as was the case in the Westphalian system.
Oh, nothing. Is this thing stuck?
But we should deal with state civilization or civilizational states. That is totally new actor, and that was already somehow described in the Huntington article Clash of Civilizations. And civilization is new actor of international relations. But what is, in that sense, civilization as political actor on the level of international politics? That is civilization as not only as cultural entity, but as political body based on the community of the same culture. So civilizational state is something totally new. We don't know it if we consider history, because multipolarity is something absolutely new. That is not just return to bipolarity or to Westphalian system or something that we know from the political modernity. Multipolarity is new world vision based on the presumption that the main actor for now on will be new subject, new entity, civilizational state. And what is civilizational state, for example, applying that concept for Russia? It is not just Russian Federation. It is the big space where a Russian political culture, Russian language, Russian statehood, Russian tradition existed during a long period of time. So that is unificational project, not already something that exists, but it is open project of regional integration. So we call it Russian world, Ruski Mir. That is precisely the term. Russian world, it is not Russian Federation or some territories that we would like to add, to join, to annex. It is not so. That is the open space where civilization is historically situated. And the closest correspondence to Russian world in the case of Russian civilizational state is the concept of Akhand Bharat, that is Indian world. So we could call it Indian world, Indийский мир, as we say Russian world, Русский мир. So we could say Akhand Bharat as Indийский мир, Indian world. So it is not just India as a national state. It is the big space of Indian civilization, including maybe Bangladesh, Pakistan, Sri Lanka, Nepal, and maybe influences of India to Indonesia, Malaysia, or Indochina. So that is civilizational domain, not just a political entity. And I can't.
He getting on my nerves. So is he trying to imply that Pakistan doesn't have its own civilization state? I don't know why this thing looks stuck. It's stuck on 147. You see that? Even though we moved forward. So I don't know. Maybe I need to reset it.
From Substack, so I'm
Good
not
night,
sure.
Jacqueline.
Well, have a good night, Jacqueline. Thanks for tuning in as always. And yeah, I appreciate you hanging out, but then it gets too late for you because when we go on and on. So have a good night. See you next time.
It's normal in India to have Indian clothes, to be Hindu, and to we should make a shift and to put the presence of observer inside of India. So Indian subject. So that is language with different terms.
I'm sorry?
It's frozen for me on. Oh, there we go. We might not want to mess with it too much.
Okay. George Soros versus India. Okay.
Yeah, there's some interesting things in that whole video. If you want to watch the whole thing, we could put the link in the chat, I guess. Let's see, wherever it was.
But he's saying the emerging multipolar world, as if the world wasn't multipolar already.
Well, this is where we.
What is he talking about?
This is where they're kind of talking about things that academics have been talking about for like 30 years now or whatever, right? So I wanted to talk about another guy called Yevgeny Primakov, who was just like Putin. He was very influential and a longtime player in Russian politics. Like he was in the Communist Party before the Soviet Union fell. He was like Putin. He was part of the the KGB and stuff, and then he was like a prime minister of Russia. And so this Primakov guy is like the architect of this like Russia, India, China alliance, and this
yeah, I
kind
didn't
of
know if
multipolarity. So
I didn't know. So you want me to skip ahead to India, China? What comes next?
Yeah, well, I'm saying we could kind of wrap up playing that video. I got some other like an article would be maybe more useful to share to kind of dig into the next part or whatever, because he's talking a lot about multipolarity and he's trying to attach it to this Akon Barat, which to me is like a fascist expansionist idea, like Hitler's Lebensraum, right?
Yeah, I'm gonna just let him finish because it's only like 3 more minutes of it, so we can add because he was just to see what how he's trying to like wrap it up in a bow.
He's a slow talker, and we have to give him a little bit of grace because he's translating to English for the English audience.
True.
And it takes a while.
True. Okay. Here we go.
As well as some Christian tradition, not newly roots of Indian civilization, of recognition of eternal truths embedded in the Vedic society, in the Vedic tradition, rituals, philosophy, metaphysics, branches of Brahmanic or Shramanic tradition. So that is inclusive understanding. And in this, Akantara could enter as well. Traditional for India, for Bharat, Islamic tendency, Buddhist tendency, or Jainist tendency, as well as some Christian tradition, not newly imposed by Protestant agents. That is not about religion, that is about politics. Not Salafi Islam that is supported by CIA and by Soros network, but clearly a normal Indian Islamic tradition, sometimes close to Indian spirituality. In the Sufi, for example, there are so many very interesting Sufi tariqas in India. They are very close to Advaita Vedanta, but with different language, with different terms. But the spirit of India is always here. So Theravada Buddhism of Sri Lanka is natural part of this Indian Bharat, but Sri Lanka is independent. So it is not about political belongingness of all, or for example, of Nepal, Bhutan, or Bangladesh or Pakistan. They could stay sovereign, but we should make a shift and to put the observer, the point of presence of observer inside of India. So
he wants them to stay sovereign but be ruled by India? Is that what he just said?
What he's saying is kind of incoherent, I feel like, where he's saying
yes,
that
it is.
You don't necessarily have to give up their sovereignty to embrace this greater India or whatever, but it would be greater India that they're embracing, not greater whatever their own nation. So they would be willingly subordinating themselves to the sovereignty of their neighbor for what? That's not exactly clear, right? It's like it's changing their self-identity to something that identifies more as like an Indian cousin as opposed to like their own family, you know. I just find it problematic.
Very strange, very strange. So Sean said, "Is this Russian Alex Jones?"
Yeah, I think maybe that might be one way to put it. But he's not quite, because the Russians aren't quite as ridiculous as like the Americans tend to be, like quite bombastic, right? So maybe the Russian Alex Jones is a little bit more chill, you know.
Yeah, Rondo says he's all over the map. I don't. That's enough of him. If you're okay with it.
Yeah, that's enough of that.
He's kind of starting to piss me off.
Yeah, Dugan's a whole rabbit hole to go down, whatever. I would just maybe, I'll share with you briefly.
But I did put it, just so everybody knows, I did put it in the chat if you want to see what he has to say about India, China, what comes next, because I actually do want to keep watching this, but not today.
Right. Not live, whatever. So let me just, I'm going to share with you the little resource about Dugan's Heideggerianism, just to kind of put the page up, and then if people want to pause and read it, whatever. Because I actually wanted to talk more about the idea of multipolarity. I found an article that's calling it American Theory and Russian Practice. So that's like from 2022, whatever. So, or 2002, sorry, not 20. But I hate when I try to share this. I have to go look. There it is. I have to go find the tab I'm looking for in the forest, the tabs that I always have open. It takes me a moment. But here we go.
Make it bigger, please.
So, yep. So this is from the logosjournal.com, a journal of modern society and culture. So very modernist journal, I guess. But it says, Alexander Dugin, Heidegger's dubious disciple. In a 2018 interview with the German news magazine Der Spiegel, Steve Bannon, Donald Trump's former campaign manager and chief political strategist, who in 2016 tweeted that he wanted to make Breitbart News a platform for the alt-right, exalted Martin Heidegger as an intellectual inspiration and role model. Okay, so this first part is just talking about Heidegger supporters in the U.S. and how Bannon, whatever, probably never read Heidegger, but if he did, he probably never even understood him or whatever. But either way, he's claiming to support what Heidegger says. But that's so I'm just going to skip down. Feel free to, I can share this link in the chat, but I'm getting to the part about Dugin just for the sake of time. So Russian fascism, borderless in red. The 21st century, in essence, has not yet begun. That which is around us today in terms of meaning is still the 20th century. So much for everything is new, right? This was Alexander Dugin back in the day. The 21st century will start when we truly begin to grasp Heidegger's philosophy, and then we will gain the opportunity to make another decision, a choice in favor of transitioning to another beginning. So in contrast to, that was Alexander Dugin, who wrote a book or whatever, several books about Heidegger or whatever, the philosophy of another beginning. In contrast to new right ideologues in Europe and North America, Alexander Dugin has made a little effort to mask his fascist political allegiances. Coming of age during Soviet communism's twilight years, Dugin revered Nazism for furnishing a doctrine that provided maximal political leverage to oppose an increasingly senescent and moribund state socialism from the right. In keeping with these convictions, as a youth, Dugin joined the Black Order of the SS, a secret organization that was affiliated with the esoteric Yuzhinsky Circle. Led by the shaman and polymath Yevgeny Golovin, the Black Order of the SS was dedicated to exploring the link between Russian nationalism and Aryanism. According to reliable reports, members were obligated to address Golovin as Reichsfuhrer SS. As Dugin avowed in Fascism, Borderless in Red, written in 1997, what the motherland needed following communism's ignominious collapse during the early 1990s was a Russian National Socialism, an authentic, real, radically revolutionary and consistent fascism, a fascist fascism. But he's definitely not a fascist, guys. Don't worry, whatever. He's a Marxist-Leninist or whatever. Like, what the fuck are people thinking, whatever, right? Unless whatever these people are stating is utterly, completely false, right? But they must be pretty bold or whatever to make such statements, knowing how false they are or whatever. Using Nietzsche with the Waffen-SS, Dugin characterized Russian fascism as a revolutionary, rebellious, romantic, idealistic form of nationalism, appealing to a great myth and transcendental idea that gives birth to a society of heroes and supermen, typical fascist hogwash, right? Idealistic nonsense. So the nature of fascism is a new hierarchy, a new aristocracy, blah, blah, blah. You get it, right?
What is this need to like control people? I'm going to be right back.
Yeah, no problem.
Okay.
So I was just trying to touch on that briefly. Now I'm going to share, I think it was this one. So talking about Yevgeny Primakov or whatever, maybe actually, I wonder if I got the Wikipedia page about Primakov, just to kind of do a background. But I had this, shit, my computer's too goddamn slow for me to be hopping from tab to tab like this. Sorry guys, now I gotta wait until it responds. Shit. Sorry guys, I just gotta fix this stupid slow moving computer. Kind of makes for shitty content a little bit. Okay, good. I'm still here, whatever. Okay. So maybe I'll just get into this article rather than try and call up new tabs that'll slow things down. So, I should have had it ready. It's too late. My bad. So Yevgeny Maximovich Primakov, the architect of multipolarity. The legacy of Yevgeny Primakov, the Russian statesman who envisioned a multipolar world, uniting Russia, India, and China in a strategic alliance against Western hegemony. This article is from April 3rd, 2023. So on March 24th, 1999, Primakov was en route to the United States for an official visit. Midway across the Atlantic Ocean, the Russian Prime Minister learned that NATO forces had begun bombing Serbia, a close ally of Russia. Primakov immediately ordered his plane to turn back, returning to Moscow in a maneuver known as the Primakov's Loop. His decision aligned with the goals he had set for himself. In 1996, the foreign minister Primakov presented a plan to the Kremlin elite for developing a three-way strategic pivot between Russia, India, and China. This multipolar doctrine would serve as a tangible alternative to the unipolarity imposed on the United States in the post-Cold War era. At that time, the Kremlin was teeming with pro-Western Muscovites, which is a term we hear now thrown around a lot by the Ukrainians. So, grain of salt there. Many were deeply entrenched and funded by various American think tanks, read spy agencies. Oh, stupid, getting glitchy and freezing up on me. It was neither the time nor the place to pitch such a radical idea as uniting three vastly different countries in a strategic embrace. But like most great ideas, Primakov's was simple. First, Russia had to end its submissive foreign policy led by the United States. Second, he emphasized the need to renew old ties with India and foster newfound friendship with China. The Primakov Doctrine argued that a Russia-India-China troika in a multipolar world would provide some protection for nations with a free-thinking mentality not allied with the West. Moreover, the economic crisis in Russia presented a rare convergence of conditions within the RIC. Primakov's era was marked by former planned economies being ruthlessly plundered, by triumphant democracies under the guise of economic reforms or liberalization. Russian social thinkers and historians have noted similarities with the historical period of destruction and looting of China and India in the 19th and early 20th centuries. So that right there, it does demonstrate that because of the way that history has unfolded, it makes a whole lot of sense for Russia and India and China to have common cause with each other, because the West has done the same thing to all three of them. So why the fuck wouldn't they work together? The only reason I can understand would be because fascists don't really work together very well with each other. That's one of the problems of them trying to make their project on a global scale. It's like,
and that's why. Oh, sorry.
Well,
I was just about to say that's why Dugan, whatever his name is, like, hey, you take over all the areas around India. We'll take over all the areas around Russia. We'll live happily ever after.
Until their China get close enough, they don't have the U.S. to worry about, and then they'll have definitely nationalist or whatever traditionalist bickering as to who gets to control the people in the zones of influence or whatever, along in the border states or whatever.
So hi, Indy. Indy's asking, good to see you in here. And we stream. I used to stream on Rumble, but nobody came here from Rumble, so I just kind of got lazy and stopped.
Yeah, we haven't really been flexing ourselves too much lately. Just kind of resorted to mostly just doing a YouTube broadcast for now. Maybe we could branch out a bit more. We should probably keep doing the Rumble stream. Just like originally we were streaming on Twitter, and then they changed their rules so we had to have a membership, like a blue check, in order to stream on there. So Twitter is out, and Rumble is just like I don't know, it's like the alternative platform to YouTube that never really got like going enough to become the alternative.
You said maybe we should try Substack.
Yeah, maybe. Sounds good.
That's a good point.
Then we could try writing some articles too. That's a whole lot of learning new skills. Enjoy some articles. Maybe instead of reading articles, I could write some of my own.
Yeah. That's right. And
yeah,
Kick.
And Sean's saying Kick is good if we can get an audience there. Yeah, we might as well give Kick a try. I'm just not wanting to be on like 7 different platforms and having to tell everyone to go subscribe to our link tree or whatever. Then we gotta have like 4 different websites we check every day.
Basically, we're lazy, I think you're saying.
Yeah, you got me. Let me see where it was. As Professor Li Jing writes in The BRICS and Beyond, Primakov's vision was broader than just the RIC. Primakov's doctrine is primarily designed to dilute America's power and influence while simultaneously increasing Russia's influence and position in the Middle East and Eurasia, says political analyst Ariel Cohen of the Heritage Foundation. I wonder if he is a Zionist. In a report titled The Primakov Doctrine, Russia's Zero-Sum Game with the United States. Oh, sounds like probably. So Primakov proved to be a master at exploiting the anti-American sentiments of the Iranian Shiite establishment, Arab nationalists, and even the French foreign policy elite. During visits to Japan and Latin America, Primakov pledged Russia's support for their efforts to secure permanent seats on the United Nations Security Council. But Primakov was not letting American hawks go unchallenged. In a 2006 speech, he thundered, "The collapse of U.S. policies pursued in Iraq has dealt a fatal blow to the American doctrine of unilateralism." But this article kind of just ends there. It's weird. It's like not even ending with a period. Like it ends in mid-sentence. And I don't know if it's because I'm not subscribed or whatever, but so basically, if we want to understand these concepts like multipolarity and stuff, we have to do that historical materialism of looking into who kind of coined these terms and why. And I know I'm kind of going on and on or whatever, but I just wanted to touch briefly on this last tab, which is it's an interesting source. So it's from the Institute of International Relations, Prague. So this is like a Czechoslovakian think tank. And when you look up who the like what the predecessor organization of this Institute of International Relations is, you get like sorry, let me.
All you had to do was say think
Institute of
tank.
International Relations. Yeah, so the Institute of International Relations was originally founded as the Institute of International Politics and Economics in 1957. In the course of the 1960s, a number of the Institute's researchers took part in the reform process, which peaked during the Prague Spring of 1968. So as a result, the IIPE was reorganized during the normalization era, and on the 1st of March 1970 was renamed the Institute of International Relations. So the significance of the Institute of International Politics and Economics participating in the reform process, which peaked during the Prague Spring or whatever, that's talking about one of these, like what the Soviets would call an anti-communist color revolution in one of their satellite nations, Czechoslovakia, right? Just like how everyone knows, like calls people a tanky whether or not they support the Soviets during the invasion of the Hungarian, whatever, during the Hungarian crisis or whatever in 1957 or something, or 56, because people supported sending the tanks in. That's what makes someone a tanky. So this is like, when I'm talking with DeepSeek about like, what is this International Institute of International Relations or whatever, DeepSeek itself seems, it's weird, wherever obviously the Communist Party doesn't have too much of a leash on their AI or whatever, because it's trying to tell me that these people were genuine communists or whatever, like reform communists who were criticizing the Soviet Union from a Marxist-Leninist perspective. Okay, and then they were kind of crushed by the Soviets for being anti-communist or whatever, trying to start like a color revolution within the Soviet Union or whatever, right? So huge grain of salt on this this Institute of International Relations conference paper, but let's just kind of read it anyways. Now that I've prefaced that by warning you about the controversial nature of the source, okay? So the article says Multipolarity, American Theory and Russian Practice by Peter Kratochvil, and it's paper presented at annual CEISA convention, Moscow, 2002. Very old, but it's interesting to look at what people were writing like 20 years ago about polarity, multipolarity, and what people are saying about it today or whatever. Maybe it will be a little bit revelatory here. So the polarity concept, invented in the American international relations theory, is by no means a clear, well-defined theory. There are several competing schools of thought that do not agree with one another upon the issue of polarity and its relevance for the present-day international system. Even the realist school that traditionally attaches greatest importance to the polarity problem does not speak with one voice. Ironically enough, the schools of thought that are arguing about what multipolarity is are multipolar in and of themselves. Okay. Realists do not agree with the neo-realist reinterpretation of polarity instead, and some neo-realists split the discussion further by not agreeing with the Waltzian neo-realism. So now there's too many terms that we all have not looked up, but if anybody wants, I'll put the link in the subscription. They can read in their own time. It's a 16-page article. I only read a couple pages of it, whatever. But
you know what else is the irony in this? If you go back to the title,
yeah.
There's another irony in the title about multipolarity, American theory, and Russian practice. So when you say American theory, so are you admitting that this is like a uniparty ideology in America? Like multipolarity is a theory, but we don't practice it here.
Right.
We're the same. Well, we're one and the same.
Right. Well, the idea is that the concept of multipolarity kind of comes from American theorists, like political scientists or whatever, and the Russians are the ones who mostly adopted it, right? So that's kind of what they're saying with that. But you're right. It's kind of funny how we don't, wherever the Americans, well, they probably could, they prefer, if they, whether they understand themselves as imperialist or not, whatever, if you support the U.S. in its current state, what you're supporting is American imperialism, which is seeking to attain unipolarity. So then if you want to protect that, you want to advocate, you want to be pro-unipolarity or whatever, right? But then people disagree over, like, is multipolarity inherently better than unipolarity or whatever? And then maybe they don't even understand that. Are they arguing about, is a non-imperialist world order better than an imperialist world order? Because like unipolarity to me is imperialism. You can't have one without the other. You have to have an empire trying to dominate everyone else in order to create the unipole. So if you want to allow for other poles to exist, you're saying that other power centers deserve to have equal say in the world.
So that being said, like in Dugin's theory about like Russia having, you know, expanding, India expanding, and then they build an alliance with China. Like eventually, one of them is going to want to be on the top because that is his. Ultimately, that's like ingrained in him to have control, take control over people.
Right. Well, this is one.
So it's basically like an alliance to bring down the Western alliance to bring down like America. But then after we do that, eventually they're gonna have to fight because only one can be on top, right? We had kind of talked about this with the religions too. Like eventually
people want to have the analysis of geopolitics without having to even deal with the problem of capitalism or whatever. And you're never going to have a very robust geopolitical analysis if you're not really feeling like capitalism has to be a part of your analysis, right? So you're going to take down the American capitalist hegemony. Then what are you going to replace it with? If you have decided that there's nothing really wrong with, or capitalism's not wrong enough that it needs the revolution or whatever to permanently abolish it, then what are you going to end up with if you do manage to displace the Americans? You're going to probably end up trying to advocate for a other type of nation's conception of capitalism, which, depending on whatever kind of theorists you want to listen to, whatever camp of people that you think is right about that, whatever, does like a different nation's capitalism, is it going to, like, does the system work the same way no matter who tries to run it? Or is like American capitalism so different than British capitalism that they're two different phenomenons? To me, capitalism is capitalism. There's a universal quality to it. And whatever particularities that are to one kind of nation, at the end of the day, whatever, those are like not greater than the universal qualities, whatever. I think the universal dictates the particular, not the other way around. But that's a big conversation to have.
Well, anytime the system requires exploitation to survive, it really doesn't matter what level of capitalism you choose to adopt. It still is an exploited system, so who cares?
Right. Yeah. Where I think it's really important because the
Chinese capitalism.
The pro-communist kind of idea of the path of history, like the trajectory that we're on, is like kind of like a decentralization of power or whatever. You would say, like, to give the people more power and not have it like power crystallized into these hierarchies and whatnot. But if people disagree over what the nature of communism is, or whatever, then they would sort of argue that we're not trying to work towards like a type of anarchism where we're letting the state wither away. We're working towards some new type of hierarchy that's not focused on private property or whatever and owning the means of production or whatever. So there's too many different ways that this conversation could go or whatever, right? So You want me to kind of get back to this and then we can wrap up a little bit?
Yes, please.
Okay. So I don't know if I finished reading that whole. So
no, you stopped
this
at
theoretical background is not a detailed. Yeah, I think I stopped here. So, and some neorealists split the discussion further by not agreeing with the Waltzian neorealism. This theoretical background is not a detailed analysis. It's rather a starting point for the discussion about the Russian use of the concept. So, part 2, in spite of the complexity and vagueness of the polarity concept, in the Western IR, I don't like how they put in a term like this without explaining what it is. I think it means international relations theory. So the vagueness of the polarity concept in the Western international relations theory, it was warmly accepted by Russian policymakers in the second half of the 1990s. Why wasn't it warmly accepted by Soviet policymakers? I don't know. The Russian foreign policy elite, perplexed by the fast-changing environment after the end of the Cold War, desperately needed some new unifying theme. Kozyrev and his pro-Western approach was too controversial so as to be acceptable for all the mainstreams of Russian political life, and so the multipolarity doctrine, created by Kozyrev's successor, Primakov, offered an alternative, thankfully embraced by most of the political spectrum. The doctrine uses the realist concept shown above, but it, at the same time, it claims that it fights against power politics. Its theoretical vagueness demonstrated above and its many risks did not prevent the doctrine from a tremendous success in Russia. It aimed at 3 objectives: building a consensus on foreign policy, counterbalancing the overwhelming American power, and promoting bilateral relations with those countries which were dissatisfied with the American leadership. I feel like that is exactly what we've seen. This was written in 2002, and now we have the benefit of hindsight, so we should use it. The doctrine has been only partly successful, and though being formally still valid, its heyday is already gone. And this is a claim that we can very much dissect in a very effective way, like 23 years later.
So basically, they're basically predicting BRICS in a way.
Right, but they're also, this guy is trying to predict that it's already, like this idea is already a failed idea, and it's only been partly successful or whatever, but he hasn't had the benefit. Maybe he didn't expect it to go on as long as it did or whatever. I feel like it's been more successful in recent years. Like I would say the heyday of multipolarity is now. So he got this analysis wrong. It's important. I'm really trying to stress the importance of understanding the bias of this source, of this Institute of International Relations in Prague or whatever, that is no longer a part, like a communist country, but it was a part of the Soviet Union, right? But it was always on the border, in geographically located so as to be kind of in a tug of war between East and West, right? So one of the problems we have is like there's Western Marxists and there's Eastern Marxists, and there's like a genetic fallacy that's happening where it's like because you're born in the West, you can't have any right ideas, and because they're born in the East, they're right about everything, and that's not really like logical at all. So you have to judge people's ideas based on the ideas, not on where they come from, because that's like logically inconsistent, which is important. If you want to have like viable geopolitical theories, you have to be logically consistent, right? What's up, Bad Cookies? Good to see you. So
Hi.
let me just blow this up a little bit. I've already got it at 200%, but it seems so small. Whatever. So let me see, where was I here?
The last paragraph.
Right. A more balanced but still pragmatic approach under Putin is of more use for Russia, giving her an opportunity to approach the West while retaining good relations with the East. This is another example of how long Putin's been in power, because they were talking about him back then, and we're still talking about him. So, one of the main features of the Primakov doctrine is strong anti-Americanism must be never. Okay, this is this is what this anti-communist potentially whatever reform communists in the 60s, strong kind of probably like infiltrated by CIA people, a think tank that was infiltrated by CIA or whatever to get them to pump some bullshit or whatever. Who knows? Totally speculation there. But this guy's saying that one of the main features of the Primakov doctrine, namely its strong anti-Americanism, must be removed. But to me, that's the main feature that must never be removed. They're ever going to be successful. So yeah, this guy's probably just a plant. Today, even if not knowing exactly whether the current rapprochement between Russia and the West is merely tactical or of real strategic importance, we can declare the Primakov doctrine in its original form dead. So there's a whole fucking paper to read, but because we're already going beyond 2 hours, we were trying not to do another 3-4 hour stream today. I think I'll just stop sharing there. Did we learn something today? Maybe.
My head is like, yeah, that was
so
very,
much,
very interesting.
Yeah, I want to be able to have an effective, kind of insightful perspective if I'm going to be doing a show where I'm sharing stuff with you guys. But then I start to try and learn about some of this stuff, and I'm like, oh man, I'm a little out of my depth or whatever. I gotta do more reading, kind of, to have a more valuable input. But I'll do what I could in the time I have.
Well, I know I my biggest takeaway is well, we were fine when we were just talking about India and China relations, but then when we added but if it becomes fascist, it got scary.
Oh yeah.
So good thing Dugin is like he has no control over where these relationships are headed.
Well,
just
no control.
Spitballing.
I don't know if it's fair to say he's got no control, because he's been it's been a well-known talking point that Putin or Dugin is Putin's Rasputin or whatever, right? He's like his ideological guru.
Okay, that part I did not know.
Right, but then to analyze that, whatever, we have to go into, does that come from the Russians themselves or whatever, or is that American projection?
Projection, yeah.
Like treating him like he's Putin's Kissinger kind of thing. But then you also have to remember.
Interesting to know.
And I don't know if you know, Daria Dugin was Alexander Dugin's daughter. She was assassinated in a car bomb incident, pretty much because of Dugin's view. Like at the beginning of the special military operation, like in 2023, I think it was. So he is definitely a big player in politics right now. And if I had any advice for the Russian government, I would say not to rely on Dugin's advice as much.
Well, right here it said, this is what AI is telling me, that there's no direct relationship between Professor Dugin and Vladimir Putin, with Dugin having no official ties to the Kremlin and his influence on Putin being debated and possibly exaggerated by foreign media. However, right. Dugin is a prominent supporter of Putin and his policies, such as the annexation of Crimea and the invasion of Ukraine. So
that's where people say that Putin is using Dugin's playbook because of they really changed directions in like 2022 or whatever, when they launched the operation, the military operation there. People are making the claim that Putin decided to go with Dugin's like greater, like Eurasianism, whatever. Like if you read the theories that Dugin's writing about, some of the actions of the Kremlin in relation to Ukraine and stuff seems to echo the sentiment that Dugin was arguing for, as far as like noble.
That doesn't necessarily mean that that's where the ideas came from. That just means they both had the same theory of what needed to happen next. I don't know.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of those things. like there's a kind of plausible deniability about it, where as much as you want to kind of pin the tail on the donkey or whatever, and say this is definitely this idea comes from this guy or whatever, you can't really do that because the Russians or Putin was careful enough to be distant enough from him that it's hard for people to make the claim completely, utterly factually. So there's speculation sometimes is unavoidable.
Yep. We can always speculate.
Sometimes you have to, or whatever, in order to get to a more factual position, or whatever. You gotta, like science or whatever, in order to be scientific, you have to be willing to get it wrong and then learn from your mistakes, right? So that's some of it's necessary.
Interesting. I'm just sitting here looking at some of these. Yeah, I'm gonna have to read up more on him.
I was only turned on to I didn't even know about him until I see the ACP guys or whatever, like talking up about how
him.
They're saying we should listen to him and embrace his ideas and stuff. And I'm like, no, I don't think so.
Wait, they said we should.
Flags, whatever, but maybe I've been indoctrinated a little bit against my own interests.
That's interesting.
That's because I think Haas himself is a Heideggerian. They're trying to find ways to rehabilitate some of the Nazi thinkers, either before they joined the Nazi Party or after the World War II was over, or whatever. These people still had academic careers, and some of their thoughts may have relevance outside of their affiliation with the Nazis, whatever. But to me, it doesn't matter. You can't really build on any of their work anymore because they're affiliated with Nazis, whatever. They fucking destroyed their legacy, and we cannot touch their legacy because it's toxic. That's the problem with Heidegger.
That's an odd stance to take coming from the ACP.
Well, it's Haas in particular, or whatever. This is where they want to take, Haas from Infrared, who's their party leader, which is like I always said, they were fucking idiots to allow him to be their party leader of all people, whatever. But he's kind of decided that he's like some of what Heidegger has to say, whatever. And they're trying to walk that the tightrope of we're going to pick from the literature what they said that has value and meaning to us or whatever, and we're going to leave all the rest of the bathwater behind or whatever,
Didn't Haas get ousted?
I don't think so yet. Whatever.
Oh.
From what I saw, they made their rules about he was not allowed to be removed as party leader for the first 2 years of their existence of their party, and we have yet to, I think, see that that threshold crossed.
Oh, okay. I haven't looked at their podcast or anything in a while.
It's okay. You may have a hard time actually looking at it. This is one of the things is that they act so like Sean's saying it or whatever. The man started out by just yelling at people, and his fan base is like a bunch of 14-year-olds, right? So it's hard to watch his show and take it seriously because when you're watching it, he's acting like an asshole on purpose because that's what the viewers like or whatever. He's being a demagogue, right? He's just appealing to their emotional sentiment without really needing to be factual, right? Because that's too nerdy and boring. So we need to kind of just do the team sports stuff or whatever, and that's how we'll get enough critical mass to really then we can start talking about the real theories or whatever. But for now, we just need the useful idiots to build a massive base. So appealing to fascist tendencies or whatever without admitting to it in order to do that.
I don't know who said this in the chat. And I thought they were just being funny when they said MAGA communism, but looks like that's a common feeling about ACP. That is so interesting.
Well, ACP has walked back wherever they tried to say that the MAGA communism was just like a political ploy for them to kind of get attention, but before they were trying to make it sound serious, whatever, where there is a literal reason like that the MAGAs should be communist or whatever, right? Like it was unironic until it was ironic. So, but then I mentioned the ACP in relation to Alexander Dugin because they did at a certain time. They may walk back on this too, or whatever. They were cozying up to his philosophies and trying to say like, this is one of the things that the left in the U.S. or whatever in the West has failed because they're too purity fetish or whatever, liberal idiots or whatever. Maybe if we are more willing to listen to people like Alexander Dugin, we'd be able to get tough enough to actually accomplish something. But they're just kind of falling into the trap of listening to, like, creating a pipeline to the right without understanding that they are a part of it, you know.
Yeah, this is an interesting article because it's talking about how how the grooming process of creating those little cults from a narcissistic person, like how a part of it is the leader right here. They're the only ones that are allowed to scream at everybody and talk down to them.
Exactly.
That's crazy.
So that's what disillusioned me from them. I'm like, kind of can agree with when they're talking about, when they're using the Marxist-Leninist language, they can talk about like the obtaining the means of production or whatever, you know, and that kind of like using the literal Marxist language from the theory books that they've read. Then I can kind of like appreciate where they're coming from. But then they try and use this like modern social media approach where the leader's allowed to call people like faggots and bitches and shit or whatever. And then I'm just like, I don't know how much you guys are just using Marxism wherever to get to people, you know?
Okay, I'm getting tired and I gotta get some baby time.
Yeah.
And put the baby to sleep. we always do it.
Well, because there's just too much that's getting left unsaid when you get started talking about something or whatever. Then it's like, if I don't say this too, I'm going to come across as not saying enough or whatever. Hopefully.
Oh, and I want to say thank you for doing the research for this podcast, because you gave me time to be with the baby today, and I appreciate that.
No worries.
You did
with
well.
The baby. It's so important to teach babies how to walk and stuff like that, where men can do the greatest of things, whatever. But if we're not, whatever, taking care of that stuff, whatever, somebody needs to do it, right?
And I can ask him to point to your nose. He'll point to the nose now, and now he's trying to learn mouth.
Nice. Good for him.
We're taking it one by one.
Well, all right. Talking before you know it. So, and then
I know. He's screaming now. So everybody, thank you for hanging out. Like, you're still with us, and that takes a lot because we always go 2 to 3 hours. So we really appreciate the fact that you guys support us like that. We hope you learned a lot today. I swear we're going to get back to domestic policy at some point.
Yeah, I guess I have more of one of my strengths is more the geopolitics stuff. So that's where I didn't plan enough about what else could I talk about. So this is what I've just been following in the past week. So this is kind of what I had to talk about. That's all I got on the top of the mind right now. So, but okay. I digress.
No worries. So we are about to be out here. Like, subscribe, and share if you haven't already. And if you did, thank you so much. We're at 200, I think, in 1 subscriber. So it's pretty awesome. Yay! Can you do the overlay? Because my clicker doesn't clack the way it should. And
yeah, I don't think we have an outro video for you, so we'll just go to the song. Thanks everyone. Have a good night, good weekend. Stay safe. Stay socialist at the very least. Be communist if you can. Love you all.
Love you.
Have a good night.
Uh-oh. There we go.